Hey, welcome back. 2 videos in like 1 month. That's like a new record for me, so don't get used to it. If you're new here, I practice atheist witchcraft. It's placeboing myself. There's no supernatural element to my witchcraft. But if there is supernatural element to your witchcraft, or if your witchcraft is different than my witchcraft, or if you're not a witch at all but you're just very curious, please stick around because you might find something that you like. A while back, I mentioned something about using Glamour Magic to help my own self-esteem journey, and I got some comments that were curious about how that all worked. So I thought I would put together a video specifically on that topic. Now, to preface, I am not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist. I'm not about to start offering self-help advice here on my channel, but I just want to share with you things that have worked for me, just in case they might work for you too. So, content warning, we're going to be talking about low self-esteem, negative self-talk, invasive thoughts, just sometimes maybe some unpleasant things. So just be forewarned that it might get a little dark. And that is the case when we talk about shadow work. And I realized when I was reflecting on the glamour magic that I was doing, it seemed to be very intertwined with the concepts of shadow work. And that if you took glamour magic and shadow work and made sort of a Venn diagram, then the things that were most helpful for me and for my self-esteem sort of happened in the middle of those two spaces. So self-esteem is a very sensitive topic for me and maybe for you too. So I kind of wanted to make some statements just so that I could be really transparent about my feelings. Having low self-esteem does not mean that you do not deserve the love and respect from others. That old adage of how can you expect someone to love you when you can't love yourself is hurtful, and it's a bunch of baloney. Everyone is deserving of love and respect, even if you can't, you're not in a place to give that love and respect to yourself. I think for everyone, self-love is sort of a work in progress. Also, I think that if we're honest with ourselves, we don't have to love our bodies, but it's important that we appreciate our bodies. All bodies are amazing and worthy of awe. We breathe a corrosive gas and we walk around under the crushing weight of a huge atmosphere, and we move under the great force of gravity. That's an amazing feat that our bodies go through every day. Your home on this earth is this temple made out of flesh and bone, and I think that it does deserve some amount of respect and appreciation. When I talk about shadow work, it does have a lot of different connotations and meanings, but when I specifically use the word shadow work, I am using my practice, meditation, mindfulness, self-reflection, analyzing myself to look deep within myself, to maybe hunt down the causes for some of the issues that I have currently. And when I talk about glamour, glamour is a metamorphosis or a change, like a way to control the way others view you, and often the way you view yourself. So it's about appearances, but it's not it's not always like a self-care bubble bath beauty spell. It can be, but glamour is, for me, a lot to do with perceptions and how I perceive myself and how I want others to perceive me. And in the spirit of glamour and glamour magic, I thought I wanted to look very glamorous today, so I wore this dress that was passed down to me from my wacky aunt who held a lot of really outrageous glamorous parties in the 90s, in the 80s, and so that's where this dress came from. I also have some peach juice here in a champagne flute because I thought that would be really glamorous. So it wasn't that long ago that corporate America really latched onto the self-love mantras, and we were all supposed to look in the mirror in the morning and tell ourselves how beautiful we were and how powerful we were, and then we were supposed to buy Dove soap and Maybelline makeup products in the process. But our generation and the generations that are younger than us, I think that we're just too skeptical, we're too jaded with that corporate talk. So I think that mantras have to be really specific and honest and real in order to work for us. And for some of us, the mantra of self-love is completely out of reach. And if that's the case for you, then the better place to begin on this journey would be the very starting point, which would be neutrality. Like if you really loathe yourself, then the next step above that is to be neutral about yourself. So instead of looking at yourself in the morning and, repeating like, I am beautiful, I am stunning, it might be a better starting point to look in the mirror in the morning and look at yourself and say, I exist. Like that might be a more reasonable mantra to start from. So, if I'm having a really bad day, I might look in the mirror and I might see the very uneven texture that's starting to happen in my skin, and I might start to have bad thoughts about the texture of my skin. And so I might look into the mirror and peer at myself and repeat to myself, I have skin, I have skin, I have skin. And this takes away the expectation of what skin is supposed to look like, and it takes the power away from not meeting expectations of how you feel your skin should look, and just appreciating the fact that skin is keeping you alive, and you are human, and humans have skin, and this is your skin that you have. And when we do this analysis and when we do these mantras, we're not talking about the body that you maybe had once had, and we're not talking about the body that you think you should have in the future, that you might want to work towards. We're always talking about the body that you are in today in this moment. We can't ignore this body because this is our home right now. And, we'll talk a lot about like conditional and unconditional love. And love that has conditions placed on it isn't really love at all, right? Like it needs to be unconditional. So you can't place those conditions on yourself either. Like you can't say, I will love myself when this happens, or I will love myself when I look like this, or when I feel like this, then I will love myself. But right now it's okay to hate myself because I promise that I will love myself when I meet these goals. And wanting to put these conditions on feeling good about yourself, like I can't feel good about myself until I meet these conditions, like that could be a holdover from religious trauma, but that would be that's a whole nother video. Once you feel secure in addressing your body in a neutral way, then we can get into some shadow work. And that's going to be feeling emotions around your body, and then isolating what triggers those emotions, and then connecting those threads back into your past and trying to identify when this first started to develop. And you might find that the voice that you use to denigrate yourself isn't actually your voice. Now, shadow work is a very personal thing, so I don't know what your shadow work looks like or what your spells look like. Often the goal is to pull that thread and get back to the original point, and so that you can start working through and healing the root cause of the issue. And for me, when I pull that thread of low self-esteem, what I will often find at the root of it is someone else's low self-esteem that they have transferred to me. And I think that we find that hating oneself is kind of like an infection, and it can spread to different people. Like if you think back to when you were young, a young person who feels very insecure will often target someone that they see as an easy target, and then they will transfer their insecurity to that person through like harassment and bullying. And that's not to say what that person did is okay or acceptable or excused in any way, but it's just like a cycle that can be broken. Like I know it's a cliche that bullies have low self-esteem, and like I'm not asking you to feel sorry for that person or to like waste any of your shadow work on that person, but I'm hoping that it can maybe take some of the power away from that event to know that it was coming from a place of severe insecurity. And certainly I don't want to hear the voice of an insecure child when I walk past a mirror. And this is always the really uncomfortable part, right? Like shadow work is heavily personal, very uncomfortable, and it's a lot of work. Like it's not called shadow easy, right? I find something that can make it easier to deal with some of those painful memories from the past is I will take a picture of myself from when I was that age, at that time period, and I will put it on my altar, because I find it's a lot harder to have negative self-talk towards a younger version of you when you look at a picture of you and you realize like that person, they were just trying to do their best. Like we need to be kind to that person. Something else I discovered in my shadow work were a lot of the intrusive thoughts about my appearance were in my mother's voice. My mother was absolutely not a bully. She was extremely kind. She loved me very much. She told me I was beautiful and smart every day growing up, and she still tells me that I'm beautiful and smart, even though I'm old and grown. But that's not what I hear in my head when I have insecure thoughts. What I hear is when my mother was talking about herself, because I am pretty much a carbon copy of my mother in both mannerisms, appearance, just in a lot of ways. So when she would talk down about herself, it's sort of imprinted on my memory. And it's like she was insulting future me because I was going to grow into her when I was older. So then when I was older, every little critical thing, every cruel thing that she said about herself, like I would play to myself in my head when I would look in the mirror. And if you have a baby boomer parent, you maybe had a similar experience to me. My mom was very thin, and yet she was on a diet my whole childhood, and she just really struggled with her own body image. She would also really fuss over whether or not her clothes were fashionable. She couldn't just go clothes shopping and enjoy purchasing things that she wanted to wear. She was always really analyzing about, what other people would think about what she would wear. And I will never forget, in the 90s, she bought a VHS tape called Abs of Steel, and she religiously did these workouts for weeks and weeks. And she was so devastated that she wasn't going to have these defined abs after, giving birth to 3 children. I don't know if it was a reasonable goal to have. And now that I am the age that she was, I feel like I've had all this negativity programmed into my heart, and I really have to put in a lot of work to weed it out. And if my mother ever knew that I felt that way, I think that she would be really devastated. And sometimes I do, she'll still make comments about her body or what she's wearing, and I stop her and I tell her, I'm like, hey, now that I'm older and I look just like you, and so when you insult your hair, you insult my hair, so stop it. And so, why do our baby boomer parents, why do they have such low self-esteem? And I think that has a lot to do with the capitalist patriarchy, and that it's, billions of dollars of industry. It's dollar signs when our parents deprecate themselves, because really the only way to solve this self-hate is to consume, right? And so we have these companies, they create the problem of low self-esteem, and then they try to sell the solution back to you, and then they're destroying the environment in the process. Maybe it's helpful if you hear the self-deprecating language in your head, the intrusive thoughts. It might help if you hear them in Mr. Burns' voice. And then you can know that it's corporate greed that's trying to get you to not love yourself. Or if it helps, hear the intrusive thoughts in the voice of an, unwashed dude bro on a podcast talking about low value women and how dare they let themselves go, and I would never date a woman with body hair, if just hear it in that voice. And then it might be easier to be I don't have to listen to that. That is a dumb opinion. And so that kind of leads into the next part of this, where we move from the shadow work to the glamour work. So in the shadow work, we want to be very neutral to ourselves, forgiving and accepting of ourselves, and it's okay to live in our bodies. Our bodies are okay. And then we move into, what do we think is valuable and desirable? And where is the disconnect between what we find desirable and how we see ourselves? And, why is that not lining up for us? If you're not stacking up to your own standards, then where do these standards come from? Are these standards reasonable? And are they your standards? Or is it, the capitalist patriarchy's standards? And if you are not fitting into some weird narrow view of what desirable and attractive is, then maybe it's time to widen that view of what is desirable and attractive. For me, when I really want to diversify what I feel is attractive, because, we're getting spoon-fed a very narrow, vanilla view of what desirability is. You can look at thousands of years of art history, because artists create art around what they think is very desirable. And you will see an expanse of different bodies when it comes to art history. And it's easy to look at those bodies in art and just be like struck and in awe and think, oh, wow, this is so deserving of reverence. And you have to turn that around, and you have to apply that to yourself, as uncomfortable as it is. If this sculpture of Aphrodite kneeling, and, all of her rolls are very soft, and she has a lot of movement, and she has a very flat butt. And if that is the pinnacle of a Greek goddess, then, maybe I can apply that same standard of beauty to myself. We really need to broaden our view of what attractiveness is and what is desirable, because it's absolutely subjective. So just make the choice that subjectively, I am desirable. And for me, I guess sometimes because the way I feel that I appear, I have a hard time describing it. And I feel like if I could better describe it, then I could be more secure in it. Recently, I saw a TikTok that said, to all the girls that look like boys, that look like girls. And I thought, sometimes I feel that. And I do know people that sort of encapsulate that, and they are absolutely desirable. There's another one, something like, I want to be feminine and wear makeup, but I want to do it like how boys do it. I had somebody that was trying out new words that aren't usually used, and they called me comely, and I didn't know what that meant, so I kind of Googled it, and it means pretty, but it doesn't sound like it means pretty, and I kind of identify with that. It's like pretty, but kind of, it's I'm handsome, and like, that's wonderful. Like, it's okay to be handsome. That's just a different kind of desirable, right? Sorry, we ran out of battery there really quickly. So where was I? Yes, I'm handsome. And I don't know, that just feels really good. Okay, so in summation, I use a lot of shadow work in my glamour. I'm going to call it shadow glamour because I think that sounds really cool. Patent pending. So the shadow work is your transformation. The caterpillar enters the cocoon. And when caterpillars go into their cocoon, they sort of liquefy, right? They break themselves down into their components. And I think that is a good metaphor for shadow work, because for shadow work, you're following all these threads and you're unwinding them. Like you're pulling apart these hopeless, tangled knots. And once you pull everything apart to its fundamental pieces, then you can start to build it back together in the way you want. And that's what the glamour is. You're in your cocoon, you're building things the way you want, because you are a powerful witch, and your intentions can manipulate your own reality. You can make these choices to alter your own perspective. And so then you can come out of this cocoon like transformed, right? And it's not going to be easy. It's spell work. But I think it's really worth the work, because life is very hard, right? And we don't need to be beating ourselves up all the time. Like, that just doesn't make it easier. That makes it harder. Like, we need to advocate for ourselves. You need to be kind to yourself. So, work on that inner child, do your healing, be neutral about your body, appreciate your body, respect the temple made of meat and bones. Redefine desirability, because the new attractive is now a bog hag that is extremely powerful and wears a gown of moss and a crown of antlers. And I think we can all get down with that. We're done with beauty standards. We're going to do a cleanse where we we just get rid of all that negativity. Okay, well, anyway, that's it. That was a little bit of a hodgepodge. I have a hard time talking about personal stuff like that. So if it was a little bit of a mess, I apologize. If I got something wrong, please let me know in the comments. If you have personal things that you do with shadow work that blends together with your glamour, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.